Welcome to One, where we'll learn about the one body of Christ, one story at a time. Well, welcome to another episode of One, where we learn about this one body of Christ, one story at a time. And I'm so pleased today that I get to have Ben Davitt here as our guest. And Ben is just a great guy, and you're going to get to learn about him and about his life in the industry, as it's called around here in Hollywood, and his work with Disney, and really his life as a follower of Jesus. So Ben, hey, welcome. I'm glad you're here, buddy.
Thank you. Glad to be here. Glad to be part of this.
Well, I was telling Ben before we got on, he's got to have the absolute coolest backdrop of anybody I've ever had a chance to like Zoom with and do an interview, man. I mean, for somebody in the industry, you nailed it, dude, with these posters behind you.
Thank you. Yep, they are reminders of different parts of being in this industry for sure.
That is cool. Well, it really does. Like, it totally reminds me of Entertainment Tonight, and somebody interviewing Brad Pitt. So I'm looking right now at like, an interview and you're that Brad Pitt being interviewed for the movie. So dude, well done. You nailed it.
I don't think I'm Brad Pitt.
Well,
thank you.
I'm sure Tanya probably thinks that, your lovely wife. So now tell us, you're married.
Yes.
For how long?
I've been married for 22 years.
Wow, 22. Fantastic. And you've got three kids.
Yep. And we 12, 11. Sorry, let me go backwards. They're older than that. They are 13, 12, and 9. Wow.
So your hands are definitely full.
Yes. Yeah. That is for sure. But it's great. Fantastic time to be with them and just watching them, grow up. And, they're you've had this too with your kids where you have them as the babies and you're like, oh, this is a great time. I don't want that to change. And then they become toddlers and you're like, oh, this is a great time. And, now we got one teenager, the other one will be a teenager here in a few months. And then my youngest, who's about to be double digits here in a couple months as well. And you just love the time that there is and just watching them grow up. And it's just fantastic.
It really is. And I totally agree. Like, each stage has its unique sort of gifts and special things to it. We had a special tradition that we borrowed from some friends, double digits. And it was a double digit birthday. And so whenever each child turned 10, they got to do a special kind of overnight getaway, Cade with me and Kaya with mom. And again, just kind of marking those special transitions, and you going to those special transitions. Like your boy started playing football here a couple years ago.
Yeah, last year actually was his first year, and that was a crazy time for sure because he was like, "Oh, hey, I want to do football. I want to do tackle football." I'm like, "Okay," and he's a tall kid for his age, so we signed him up through the SC Wildcats, and we put in his height and age, and they're like, so he probably should be in sophomore or junior, but because of his height. He needs to be in the senior. We're like, okay, that'll be interesting. Never played before. We've just tossing the football around and that type of stuff. Never really played, and here he is going in with the seniors. But
wow,
he did a fantastic job. They ended up winning the Super Bowl last year, and and he really grew in the position. He played defensive tackle, and he really got into that and had fun being on the line. And obviously, he wasn't one of the starters because. He, it was his first year, but he really got into it and he got to play quite a bit and got in there and got some sacks throughout the year. And he even got noticed in the last party that they had at the very end and all that type of stuff. And he got noticed for, being I don't remember exactly what it was. It wasn't kind of a reward, but just one of the coaches, like the most improved and that type of stuff. And so,
and to be one of the young ones who's playing a league of older kids, man, that's pretty cool.
Everyone was a year older than him, so
that's cool. Now, did you play sports growing up?
Yeah, I did. I played soccer most of the time.
Okay.
I wanted to get into football, but I couldn't actually do that because of when I was a baby, I had this really bad accident, and with that, I was in a coma for 3 days and wasn't supposed to walk or talk or any of that coming out of there. But Lord seemed to have other plans for me. So here I am today. But with that, they said they couldn't be any trauma to the head. So you can't play football.
Okay.
So I did get into soccer, played that it started when I was like 4 or 5, something like that. And then went all the way through high school. But there's a couple of years I didn't do it, and actually did wrestling a couple of years out of that. But for the most part, it was soccer.
Soccer and wrestling, yeah. So I was more the football first, and then in baseball and basketball. So, but sports are such a beautiful thing, kind of a metaphor, for life of just those life lessons. And so I can't tell you how many times, like with my son, I've translated whatever he's going through, a challenge in school to, okay, some football metaphor. And I do it so much now that he's like, Dad, just don't do the football metaphor. Just don't.
Oh, that's great.
But it works, right? It just works. Now, Where did you grow up, Ben? Did you grow up in Southern California?
No, actually in the Midwest. So was born in Illinois and was there for a while. My parents divorced when I was around 7 or so. And my dad, he after a year or so, maybe a little longer, I don't exactly remember the timeline of it, but he eventually moved to Tennessee. So was with him during, summer and that type of stuff. So some of the time in Tennessee, most of the time in Illinois. And then it's my junior year of high school, we actually moved to Nebraska because my mom, who is a preacher, and she got a church out there. And so she was starting a church, I should say, out there in Nebraska. And so we moved out there.
Wow. So your mom was single, really, it sounds like the whole time when you were from 7 on?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, she did. Nope, she did remarry. Oh boy, when was that? Sophomore year, I think it was.
Now, do you have any brothers or sisters, or is it just you?
Nope, I have 3 brothers, 2 older and 1 younger brother.
Okay, so you're kind of squished there in the middle.
Yeah, right there, number 3.
Nice. Now, it's kind of similar for me that my mom divorced my biological dad when I was like 3, and he was not much to talk about, and it's a good thing actually. And then remarried. She married for a few years, 2nd grade to 8th grade. That's how I count time, is by school years. And the good thing of that was my sister, who's about 9 years younger. And then I was single again during high school for me, kind of end of 8th grade, so freshman year through high school, and then and on forward. And I'm curious, for you, being raised in a single parent family, and your mom is in ministry. How did you come to faith in Christ in the midst of that environment, and what was going on in your world? Kind of walk us through that.
Sure. Let's see. How much time do we have? No, I remember most of the time always being around church. Because we would always go to church and so forth. And then she, went on to seminary and became a minister and so forth. And she worked in different churches, and she had one in Illinois, and then again started one in Nebraska. And so I always remember being around churches and so forth. So, knowing God and being a part of all of that has always been there. And when I was young, I'm sure at some point in time, I don't exactly remember, but you say the prayer and that type of stuff when you're young and so forth. And then there was one camp I went to, and again, I don't remember the age for this, but at that point is where I was baptized. Mm-hmm. But throughout all this time, it was kind of different waves, right? I always knew about God, but it wasn't that like full in, like 100% here we go type of thing, right?
Yeah.
And then it was let's call it, it was my sophomore year. That's right. My sophomore year was, so right before high school, we were still in Illinois, but we moved from one smaller town to Springfield, Illinois, which was much bigger, and started going to a private school there. And then with that school, got involved with the youth group, and I play guitar as well. So I helped them with, playing guitar up on praise and worship team and so forth. And again, still through all that, it was just kind of the waves and so forth but just not giving it the 100%. Right. And then it was my sophomore year, the youth group would do the overnight type of things. I'm sure everyone has probably at least heard or been part of those.
We used to call them lock-ins. Yeah, we'd call them lock-ins.
That's right. I couldn't remember the name. I was trying to think of it. Lock-ins. That's right.
Lock-in,
that's right.
Yeah.
And then so in one of those, it was, we're kind of sitting there, and I don't remember what our youth pastor was preaching about. And but what I do remember is, there was an altar call at that time, and it was not the place where they do altar calls all the time or whatever. It was very rarely they did it, but they did it. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, okay. And again, it's like, I know God, everything's good. And I was just kind of like, hey, you need to go up there. It's like, I'm good. It's like, no. You need to go up there. It's like, no, I'm good. It's like, no, really, you need to go up there. It's like, okay, fine. So then went up there, and then it was at that point where it was just like, okay, now I get it. And, here's 100%. And all right, God, I'm going to be the vessel for you. You guide me through life. Where do you want me to go? And it's been a journey for sure. But that's kind of when it all kind of came together at that point.
That's really when it clicked for you. Like, okay, this is kind of not the faith of your mom's, but this is yours. And so and that's awesome, because then as you make the transition from high school to college, where'd you go from there?
So college, that's an interesting story as well. So again, my junior year is when we moved from Illinois to Nebraska. And that's actually where I met my wife. So high school sweetheart.
Okay.
We did get married out of high school. We were both 18 and trying to figure out what to do with life and all that. Yeah. And through a lot of growing up, my mom always said, hey, you're going to be great at preaching, at being a minister. And that was kind of ingrained in my head. And I said, okay, really? So went to a Bible school up in North Dakota. And that was an interesting time, being a newlywed and going up there in a very small town of like a couple hundred people, very small town where this where the college was. We were there for a year and realized, nope, I don't think I'm going to be a minister. That is not where God's calling us. Yeah. And my passion has always been in music. So we said, and even when I was at the school, I helped out with the worship team. I was on a traveling worship team. And then I was also in the audio video and being part of that of the school and all. I was like, this is where I'm always drawn to. So my wife and I ended up leaving, and we kind of did a little bit of searching for a few years. We were in Tennessee, living there next to my dad for a while. My mom got sick. We moved back to Illinois. And then we're like, all right, we got to kind of figure out exactly what we're going to do in life. And it's like, God, where do you want us? And we found another school. It was actually a trade school down in Florida. And all everything aligned for us to go down there. And we're like, okay, here we go. So we went down there. And again, it was going to be in music and be like, all right, I want to be whether it be a mixer or something like that, and just work in the music area, whether it be Nashville or whether it be New York. Didn't think about LA too much at the time, but just, the different music areas. And then, but through there, one of the classes was post-production. And I'm like, really? and I've always been in film. I grew up watching films because of my older brothers, and probably watched stuff a lot sooner than I should have because of my older brothers. But
it's the way it always is with the middle kids, right?
Yep. That's how it goes. So movies have always been a huge thing for me. And what we did is there was the professor, I guess, he had a 5-minute clip of Toy Story 2, the very beginning, if you remember that, where Buzz Lightyear's going through space and all that, right?
Right.
So I had a 5-minute clip of that, and it was complete silence. And, it was a group that we got together and said, you need to create everything. You got to do dialogue, you got to do ADR, you got to do Foley, you got to do music, you got to mix it. At that time, we could do surround sound and all that stuff. And so we did the whole mix and everything of it. And I said, that's going to be a fun thing to do. Let's do this. And
Wow.
so then graduated with audio engineering. So because it was all around audio, we just had one thing of post-production inside there. And then it's funny, Disney actually offered me a job in Florida. And my wife and I were talking. It's like, well, if we don't go to Hollywood now, then we're never going to go. So we sold everything besides what can fit in our old minivan that we had.
Nice.
And we packed it up and we moved out here.
Wow. So that's a big adventure, man. I mean, cross country, like, hey, we're striking out.
Yeah.
Going out there, man. That is really cool. It's so cool hearing people's stories and just, that journey of like, okay, Lord, what are you calling me to? And it's such a process, isn't it? Of just, you try something and you learn a bit here and you try something else and go, no, it's not really that. And all along, the journey is so important, right? If you didn't have those bits and pieces, where you end up, right, wouldn't work, because you need those bits you pick up along the way.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And the thing I've been saying almost since I was the sophomore, where I said, okay, God, let's do this. I'm just going to be a vessel for you. Where do you want us? And it was just like, we want you out in Hollywood, and it's a very, very dark industry for sure. This Hollywood is. And it's like, we need, God was like, we got to have light inside there. So, and, there's obviously other Christians and who's out here and helping us to bring the, light of God into this industry. And so I'm just here to be a vessel and say, where do you want me? And that's usually my, in my prayer request or every day, or my prayers, I should say, every day is, hey, wherever's next, just let us know. We're a vessel for you.
See, and that's just such an awesome perspective, Ben, man, because I think that's my prayer is that, like, all of us, me included, would have that kind of perspective, because then it changes really the way we view, right, our job, our vocation. It's not just simply, hey, this is this thing that I do and it's this vocation, but it's now like, this is my calling.
Yeah.
And what's so cool, it's funny, that, your mom would say, hey, I feel like you were called, to be a preacher. And in some sense, she was right? Because you're a missionary.
Yep. I've thought of that as well. It's definitely come full circle. That I'm like, this might have been what she was talking about.
Totally.
Not being there, on the pulpit and, in front of the church or whatever, but going this route. So, yeah.
That is cool. And so now the journey is really neat too, to hear, you had this interest in, audio and mixing, and you've got this sound background, you're a musician, but then you've got this, video and production element. And you were at Fox, and then Disney bought Fox, and now you're doing this very thing at Disney. Right, so you're getting to work on a lot of the movies that all of us just can't wait to come out.
Yeah, it's definitely been a journey for sure, especially with Fox and even getting up to Fox. But we'll just stick with that one. So, started with 20th Century, and it was great. It was trying to get onto that lot, particularly for years, and be there, because it's one of my favorite lots that are out there. And then it was there. And then, a short time after, you hear, oh, hey, we're going to sell the company. And, through the time you hear it all through the news, there's not a lot of internal communication that's going on. And then, Disney was the one who won out of that, because there was the battle between Comcast and Disney for a little while. And then Disney got it. And that took a while before anything changed. And then they, as they should, Disney came in and said, okay, well, let's see what we have and let's put them in the right places, because we wanted to bring 21CF into Disney instead of just letting it be its own company, more or less. And there are still parts of 20th Century, because now it's called 20th Century Studios. There's still some that they're going to make movies and so forth. But my particular group got absorbed into Disney. And that's definitely been interesting. It all kind of, it happened over for a year, but then last March is when they really made some changes and said, all right, well, operation wise, it's going to be cut in half. Engineering wise, it's going to be cut in half. So it was very hard time. Luckily, I got a position through Disney, because they were like, hey, where you currently are, you're no longer going to have this position, but here's a new one. And I'm like, all right, cool. And, found out what it was and becoming a manager of 3 different groups inside Disney. And I was like, hey, this sounds really fun, and praying about it. And hey, Lord, is this where you want us to be? Is this the next path of where you want us to be? And hopefully it is. It seemed like it was in our prayers at that time. So we said yes and took the position. And now I get to be part of the editorial part of Disney. A lot of it mainly Marvel. So the shows on Disney Plus and the movies and that type of stuff. And then we also get to do all the sound mixing for the different features, Marvel as well, but along with other features too. And then the whole digital media part after that. So I get to kind of manage those 3 groups. And it's been a fun 6 months, very interesting, because when I got this position, it was a week later is when we got the stay at home. So
oh my goodness.
Don't know anything about Disney. And then they're like, well, here's this new position, get started. So I get to learn all my teams and learn what they do and the different parts of the lot, all while I'm working at home. It's been an interesting 6 months.
Perfect. Right. It's great. You have a good commute,
Right.
You're telling me how, the unique environment now where, your life is, 15 to 20 Zoom meetings a day and multiple streams of information coming in at one time and trying to juggle all that.
And it gets crazy. Yeah.
I bet it does. It's fascinating to me, in the midst of that change that you went through was really substantial, right? You had a whole bunch of uncertainty during the whole, things are going to be sold, right? 20th Century Fox is going to be sold, don't know what's going to happen. And you're kind of waiting, carrying on and uncertainty through that. And then comes the announcement, Disney's bought Fox, and then there's the food basket turnover, and now there's this decision that you're faced with right about a week before the lockdown or so, a couple of weeks. Do you come to Disney or not? As a Christian, how did you and Tanya navigate that? How did you navigate this period of uncertainty? We're waiting to find out what happens with this company that I'm at, and then this decision. How did you guys do that? How did you do that as a Christian? How did you guys do that as a couple as Christians? How did you navigate that and think through that?
Sure. There was a lot of prayer time during that. Mm-hmm. It had to be kind of a quick decision as well. So we didn't have a lot of time to really process it. It was within a couple days we had to let the executive know, hey, we're going to take it or not take it, because there was a big organizational change that went along with this, right? Inside of the Disney. And so they needed to announce that because things were already changing on their side, but they were waiting for my part of it. So we didn't have a lot of time. So we just sat there and, was praying and be like, okay, Lord, where do you want us? What is we're the vessel for you. Where do you want us to be with this? And just guide us on what it is. And at that point, COVID was around, but there wasn't any talk about lockdown at that time. And we're looking at, here's the severance, which I will admit was a very nice severance. It was very tempting. And then here's the new position. And the new position, it wasn't 1-for-1 salary wise. Let's put it that way. It was a little less, and so it was that played into it as well. It's like, okay, well, which is the best way to go? And we just kept praying and all right, well, here it is. I guess we'll take the chance, and it feels like this is be the direction to go, and it's just a new adventure. And Lord, this must be where you want us now. And so I called up the HR and the executive, and I said, okay, let's do this. And here I am.
That's awesome. And, one thing I hear in that, Ben, is how you and Tanya were dialoguing on this together. You're praying about it together. And it sounds like you together came to a place of peace about the decision. Is that fair?
Yeah. Yeah. And with Tanya and I, our foundation of our marriage is communication. Mm-hmm. And obviously that has its ups and downs, as it does over 22 years. But sure. That's what we can always fall back on, is the communication. So we can just sit there and be like, okay, let's just talk about this. And, and we'll pray about the different situations and so forth. And it's great to have her and to be there and be able to have that communication with her. And she's absolutely amazing. So, yeah. We got through there and just talked about it and figured out which is the best way to go.
Yeah, it's been the way for Lori and I in a lot of major decisions. many times, of, okay, boy, this is a big career change or a big move, across country or a move overseas for us. And for us, and for me, a big indicator, this is clearly what we're to do, even if it seemed crazy, was just that peace that we would both have of, yeah, okay. And you kind of look at each other and go, boy, for a lot of reasons, maybe this doesn't make sense, but boy, there's a peace about it. We've prayed about it and we've, explored all the things. We've used, our intellect and our, reasoning as much as possible. But sometimes the decisions, they may not be make the most sense financially. They may not make the most sense in the world's view, and yet you go, no, I have this sense here praying about it. And then when Lori's like, yeah, I remember just went to move. We were living in Dallas, Fort Worth, and it was going to be leaving one position and going off to graduate school. And I just sort of sprung this on Lori, and I tell it to her over lunch, and she looks at me and goes, "That's crazy." And then I'm thinking, yeah, this is okay, bummer. This didn't go well. And then the next thing she says is, yeah, we should do this. And and my next thought was, yeah, she didn't hear me clearly. I need to explain this again.
Yep. I understand that.
She's like, no, I feel at peace about this. Like, wow. Okay.
Yeah, that's kind of how it was when I actually went from a post house into 20th century. Was along the same way. Is I was looking for different jobs for a while out of the post house. It wasn't going in the best position, and so looking for other jobs. And this one, he was actually the vice president of engineering at the time, and reached out to him early in the year, and then it was late in the year. Says, "Hey, we might have something." So, things. It was a very long process. Took I think 3 months, 4 months, something like that. But eventually, got the job offer. But during that time, there's lots of discussions that Tanya and I had, and we were talking about it because it was a huge change, right? Because I've been working in Burbank. I mean, we've been out here for 15, 16 years, something like that. And it's always been in Burbank until Fox came about, and then it's Century City. So you have the commute time with that and hours and all that type of stuff. And so it was a big change. And then also it was the time when we were helping you out and doing videos for the church and that type of stuff. And I don't really want to give that up. And, and we just sat there and Tanya was like, look, this is what you've been wanting to do. You've got to take this. I know. And I think it was me who was more unsure than her probably because I was like, yeah, but we're doing this other stuff and the commute and the kids and, we're helping out the church and we're doing this. And she's like, yeah, you need to go. And it was hard for me, definitely, and all doing all the other stuff because most of the other things had to stop and our life changed because of the commute and all that type of stuff. But no, she was good with it, and she was the one who was like, yeah, sure, well, let's go.
Boy, isn't that huge? That is just because you think about it from Tanya's perspective, that means you're going to be, because I remember that commute, it was wicked, man. It was like, what, an hour and a half each way kind of a deal?
Yep. There was some of the times it took 3 hours to get home if there was anything going on in the freeways. Oh, 3 hours to go 35 miles.
So that was the 405?
Yep. Oh, yeah.
That thing got rated the worst section of freeway in the world at one point here in the past couple of years?
That doesn't surprise me.
You're like, yeah, I live that, brother. I know that's true. Holy cow. Well, you think for Tanya be like, okay, this means you're going to be up and gone before the kids get up. You're going to be back home. They may be already be in bed. There's a period here we're going to have to go through this. I'm going to be carrying the load with the 3 kids. And she knows that going in, and you're thinking, man, this is not good. And she's telling you, no, I think you should do it. Man, what a confirmation as you guys are praying about it and being on the same page. That is huge.
Yep. All the stuff that she said, I can do this. And she just knew she had the strength to take it on and, God there with her. And so we did it.
Man, that is beautiful. What a beautiful picture of a partnership, of you guys just being there together, working through that together. That's a beautiful picture. It really is.
Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing. She's amazing. All the stuff that she puts up with me.
We won't go into that, Ben. Yeah. We'll hold that for some other time. That's a different podcast. No. Well, and so now at there at Disney and the stuff that you're doing, you're getting to work on these teams. All right, you said you got 3 different teams, and you guys are working on these big production movies, and you're doing this in the midst of at least in our lifetime, one of the most unique kind of periods, right, with COVID and lockdown and this kind of stuff. How are you handling that? I mean, what kind of what kind of tips? Lessons learned maybe that you're gathering over these past however many months of handling this on a personal level. How do you handle this, environment, the stress, and just in leading, as a Christian, as you lead in this, what have you learned? What are you learning through this?
My prayers are definitely help me through the days. They're more each day at a time right now, for sure, with that. But, I've been doing management stuff for 20 plus years. So that part isn't too bad. But the being a part and not being there with the groups has definitely been challenging.
Yeah.
Probably the biggest thing I learned is, just every day is a new day, and you just gotta be calm and get through it. And there are times where you're definitely just, why did this happen? And it's just frustrating, especially because along with those 3 teams that I'm managing, I am also part of the 21 CF migration. So we still have to migrate a whole part of Fox and get it out of the lot that it currently is and into Disney over the next a little less than a year at this point. So I'm still working on that part along with managing. So there's definitely some frustrating times, and just trying to be there and be patient and just enjoy the time that it has and be like, hey, this is how things are going. And a lot of this has been, there's one of my favorite songs actually is about this guy who had a really hard day, and he's like, and throughout it, you hear the different parts of what he has. But what he says is, Lord, I always need to thank you for the good days and the bad days. And then that's a thing that's been part of me for a long time. But definitely in the last 6 months, it's like, today was a bad day, but thank you, Lord, for this. Hopefully we get some more good days, but thank you for the good days and the bad days. So that's what gets me through. It's just, having the faith and saying, hey, again, going back, vessel for you. This is where you want me to be. Show me the way on how to go down this path. And here we go.
Boy, that perspective of having a perspective on the difficulties and the trials as having value, that really is a game changer, right?
Yeah.
That's a real game changer. Brings to mind to me the First Peter, the chapter 1, verses kind of like 6, 7, 8, and talking about trials are kind of like a refiner's fire, and that they have the function of showing that our faith is genuine. They kind of reveal it's like fire. You put stuff into the fire, and it melts away all of the dross, and what's left is the that pure gold. And so there's that function there, the suffering of the trials. They really show it is genuine. They refine us for something down the road. Mm-hmm. And man, I don't know about you, but I'm always struggling in the midst of that challenge to have that perspective you're talking about, which is, okay, there's something good that can come out of it. There's something to carry forward, to learn from, and refine and chat. That's it's going to God will use to make me more like Him. As we go down the road.
And it gets challenging for sure. As we all know, we all go through there. And it's just some of the times I think of that song and how that is more than others. There's other times you're in there and dealing with it and you're like, but I always try to okay, that this is going on for a reason. And thank you for these days, and thank you for the good days.
Man, that is powerful, dude. To even have thankfulness in the midst of that. Like that, and boy, talk about a great word for folks, dude. See, that's why I knew you need to be on today. Like, how timely is that, man? That's just so perfect because, how many challenges, folks are facing, whether it's the challenge of isolation, or the, fear of, getting sick, or, being sick of being isolated, or,
Right.
just so many different elements in this whole process. And man, when you have that sense of, okay, there's a purpose to this challenge, it's not wasted, and I'm going to be thankful in the midst of it, that is literally a game changer, like straight up game changer.
Yeah, I guess I've just always been that way, and always been the optimistic, and just let's just always have fun and look at life and just go with it. And you're gonna have your ups and downs, but just always look for the silver lining, if you will, in whatever that's going on. And there are good things about the COVID part if you sit there and look at it. And yes, there's been stressful and it's been hard, and the isolation and all that type of stuff, but you can sit there and think about it. It's like, oh, this wouldn't have happened if COVID didn't go on. And so there are those things that you can pull out. And I guess for me, it's just trying to keep those focused to get through and not go insane and being at home all the time with the isolation and everything. So just stay focused on those positive notes.
Dude, well done. Well, I can clearly see that, man, you're in the place you're supposed to be, and I think it's quite clear you're a blessing to those 3 teams that you're leading, and to have a leader who's modeling that in the midst of all this and have that perspective, man, keep at it. Because, dude, that's a huge blessing. God's definitely using you as a light there. It's abundantly clear. And I got to be honest with you, I'm now expecting some off-camera super secret tips, about video and audio, and you're going to kind of give me the inside scoop on the next Marvel thing, dude. I'm like straight up expecting it.
Yeah, right. There you go. That won't go against any NDA or anything that I signed, right?
NDA schminda, dude. Come on, right. We're talking Marvel here, brother. Come on.
That's right.
Dang it, I know you never will, but at least I got to ask, man. Well, hey, Ben, it's a delight talking to you, buddy, and just blessings for you as you continue just serving and, just using those gifts and talents you got there, man. You are clearly a light, and, man, it's been great spending time with you, buddy.
Yeah, this was fantastic. So glad to be part of your podcast. These have been great listening to the other ones that you've done. So happy you got this started. This is fantastic, Robert. Thank you.
Cool. Thanks, brother. Well, hey, everybody, it's just once again so good to be with you as we just get to hear these stories about this one body of Christ, and we hear them one story at a time. And, man, I don't know about you, but I'm just stoked to see and hear the uniqueness of the way that God is at work in people's lives and how everybody's journey is different. But in that uniqueness, man, God is at work. And so thanks again for joining us, and look forward to having you next time here on One. Take care.